fist. And you can have all the freedom in the world, but if you're not fed and you're not taken care of, if society is not taking care of your needs, then you're not free. The liberated slave dies in the ditch, of hunger, and therefore we've got to come to terms with what, in fact, are the basic requirements of this vast population we're going to have, and on that world scale of population, not just pockets of hunger, we're really beginning to look at this problem as a potential catastrophe of mankind. The population explosion is just, to me, as serious as the atomic explosion.
The number one human problem I would name is the problem with which 2/3 of mankind goes to bed every night, and that's the problem, when do we eat? The feeding of mankind, the feeding of the poor, the clothing of them, the housing of them, means the industrial revolution of the underdeveloped countries of the world. So how is that revolution going to be managed humanely? The industrial revolutions that have occurred so far in history have been pretty cruel operations. We deplore the Russian story, we look with horror on the Chinese story, but we ought to examine our own histories and our own memories of what it took to conduct the American Industrial Revolution. The 35 million human beings that arrived in Steerage Passage and percolated through the slums of our cities. The Chinese that are buried under the ties of the railroads, as Archibald MacLeish has said. The reconstruction of the human cost of our industrial revolution would appall us if we did it honestly. The answer to this problem is economic aid, and economic aid highly informed by science and technology. The important thing here is information transfer. It's transfer of technology. Technology of the education of the cadres of engineers and scientists that are needed, and doctors and physicians and technicians of all kinds. The delivery of $1 worth of this aid stimulates the production of a total of at least $5 of local activity in economic development, potentially in Brazil or India, because the major input.
Welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all having a great day, and I hope my voice is a little better since the last video. Hopefully I'm recovering now. But we want to talk today about universal basic income. Is it necessary? Is it even necessary, or is this just yet another program, or what would be another program or system that's going to spend a lot of money, that's probably going to not be helpful overall to the economy, and so on and so forth. Dealing with what is necessary. So we just watched an excerpt from The Futurists. This was some of the greatest minds in economy and science, medicine spread across the globe, who in 1967 predicted what our worlds would be like today. And whereas, like with many predictions, they aren't always gotten correct, but there is an uncanny ability through some of these predictions to hit right on the time we're facing today and come out with some strikingly pretty solid predictions. And that's what happens with the Futurists. We'll try to leave a link in the description. It's an awesome interview of these gentlemen, and I think you'll like it. But let's get back to universal basic income. Is it necessary? So there have been many focuses and reasons why to implement a universal basic income. There seems to be, when there isn't a direct, clear and present catastrophe, to usher in the aid of universal basic income. There seems to be always this futuristic doomsday prediction of machines or robots or something to that effect taking over. Yet throughout several industrial revolutions, prior ones, we've seen there become this transition, into new industries. Like, yes, automation might take over, but then you might create more jobs, more service worker jobs. You might create jobs where there are service people to now service the robots and AI, and thus you have another new industry of work. And so some people will, um, in this discussion, move to the prior history we've had, and they will talk about that is the more likely scenario, and thus this is something we don't have to worry about. But there are a few issues that get left out, big issues. And from this show, The Futurists, as we got to see, this one scientist talks about the transition through these industrial revolutions was horrific, it was terrible, and we don't discuss that a lot, what we had to go through, how many people had to die, directly, indirectly, through health and so on and so forth, how many riots, protests, people left out of work before we could do this transition, because we have to keep in mind, this transition is not an overnight transition. You could be talking decades here. And a lot of people could be in grave distress during that time. In fact, and looking at something like Labor Day, a lot of us just celebrate Labor Day. We just go out and barbecue or get with the family. It's a 3-day weekend, so hey, just glad not to be going to work on Monday. But there's a reason why Labor Day was declared a holiday. A lot of people don't know that during these transitions of technology and this new era movement into a different type of workplace and workforce, that a lot of people suffer without jobs they previously were displaced by. Several people rioted and were actually killed by the National Guard, about 12 people. And just think about that for a moment. Does sound like a huge number of people that died directly. Now, keep in mind, this is direct deaths as a cause of this. Does sound like a huge amount of people, but just think about having to die based on you trying to fight for your job and your livelihood. But then, of course, there's all the other health concerns of people not working, of families, jobs, of families who depend on workers being displaced. And Labor Day ushered in several government changes that helped in the transition, and that's why we celebrate it. But after a lot of pain and suffering and destruction. So, do we really need universal basic income? Well, I guess we can look at it several ways. If you believe that automation is going to replace the human worker at some point in our history, then you will probably move to we're going to need universal basic income. Is going to be necessary. And the reason that is because although there is the prediction that new service jobs will be created to maintain these robots, the situation is generally when this happens, now those jobs require a lot less people. Yes, there might be new jobs to service the robots, but whereas you could have had a workforce of 100 people in a warehouse, now you might only need 1 to 5 people to service the robots. So that's not a whole lot of new jobs created as opposed to the jobs taken away. That's one way to look at it. I guess the other thing we could look at is if we look at something like this global pandemic, this coronavirus, we have these pandemics and flu strains that come around every century, and they wreak havoc, right? But wouldn't it be much easier if we had something in place? Like, for example, if we had universal basic income already in place when coronavirus hit, you could see things would be a lot less chaotic. As we go into our next several waves of coronavirus, we can see that now, instead of businesses opening up, life trying to get back on track as normal, things have start to go the opposite direction. Now everything's shutting down again. This creates a large amount of stress on the economy, on people's families, on people's health, and it would be so much easier systematically, I believe, if universal basic income was already in place. Now the issue with universal basic income, anytime you're dealing with a crisis, you don't want to implement universal basic income at the crisis. It is best to implement universal basic income before the crisis, so universal basic income has a chance to work. That is well acclimated into our systems, and it can handle it. But if you wait to the height of the explosion, this is going to make universal basic income that much more difficult to be an effective tool. I guess one of the other things we could look at is overpopulation, right? We hear that a lot. We know that the Earth is getting population-wise bigger, and it has ushered in concerns like, how do we feed all these people? Now, in addition to that, bees that are very important to pollination of food so the world can eat. Without the bees, they speculate that we would starve to death, and bees are dying. I used to could find bees outside a lot. I don't find bees as much as I used to. That could be an indication of the bee population going down. Now, in the worst case scenario with this, which is a very possible case scenario, we can have a great reduction in our food supply, and going up against a growing population, right? So you got all those people you got to feed. What's going to be very important with our technology, and like the scientist talks about the importance of not only getting the economic aid to the people, which is going to be important, directly to the people. The logistical means of getting the food there through science and technology is going to also be as important, right? So universal basic income in many ways can facilitate those needs. And if you believe those things are going to happen, then you will probably find that universal basic income is going to become necessary at some point. I think at this point in time, a lot of people accept that universal basic income is going to become necessary. What I like people to understand is that it doesn't make things better if you wait right on the cusp of the worst part of a crisis to implement universal basic income, instead of already letting society be able to adjust to upcoming crises and looming threats before they happen, right? Give universal basic income a chance to already have worked in society to where people are well able to function. It'll be also a less severe hit to the economy if we got to do this all at once. Think in terms of what happened with the stimulus pack, right? Where they just got to come up with trillions upon trillions of dollars and inject at one point in time. It still end up not being enough. People still end up suffering to the point that they got to do another package, right? In January, now they're talking about doing another package. Whereas some have said just let the stimulus package continue on to the end of the pandemic, which probably would make more sense. So we're going to pose a question to you. Is universal basic income going to be necessary? And before we get out of here, as always, we're going to take over to Bitcoin MYK, talk a little bit about that before we go. All right, here on the Bitcoin MYK site, and this is our project. This is our Universal Basic Income Program, a free to the people cryptocurrency that is of value, that is valuable. You get it just for being you. You get it free. It's Universal Basic Income. You don't have to do anything for it. Join our network. You get a wallet at Google Play Store on Android devices. It will be out soon on iOS devices. Right now, it's only available on Android. You can walk around with your mobile device, much like how you might walk around with your cash apps and a variety of things like this. But this is going to hold your Bitcoin and YK coins that are going to be your universal basic income money. You can send and make payments and do cool stuff like that. So it's free for everybody. All you need to do is join. You're going to start receiving that very valuable cryptocurrency every single month without doing anything but being a human being. I think if you want to learn a little bit more about the inner workings of where does the money come from, how is it generated, we have a long video series on that. We would recommend that you subscribe to the channel, ask questions, join us in our Discord chats, join us on our website here, chat, and you'll be able to get a very good, thorough understanding of just how that money gets generated through the project. But that's all I want to say. If you like content like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and as always, until next time, take care.